All right, for 2, day 3, let's tie it all together. It could be sine or cosine. All right. And we should know what everything's doing here. So let's put everything in this. See how you're doing. 2 minus 4 sine parenthesis 3x minus pi over 5. I'm making nothing easy on this one. Okay, first things first, when you see the parentheses, is this in standard form? No. We got to take the 3, bring it out in front of parentheses, because that will change this number, which is our phase shift. So don't just automatically grab the phase shift off of this. So we take time, pull the b out in front, see a 3, take out a 3. But now to see what's left, that process, it's reverse distributive. You multiply to go in, you've got to divide to go out. Divide by 3, that's what gives us the 1x. Here I've got 1/5 divided by 3. If it helps, write it down. 1/5 divided by 3. See that as a fraction within a fraction. The process, junior high, says flip and multiply. So you change this to a multiplication problem, 1/5, flip that over, you're going to get minus a pi over 15, 1 over 15. So definitely not nice numbers for you on this one, purposefully. Good there? Okay. Amplitude. Where do we grab the amplitude from? Where in this menagerie is our amplitude? The 4. And because you have a minus in front of it, it's going to be flipped over. So the snake is going to be flipped over. Period. 2 pi divided by the b number that we put out in front of parentheses. So 2 pi over 3 is the period. Doesn't simplify. Vertical shift. The number that's added to the function. Remember, this is our new axis. Vertical shift is our new x-axis. That's where we're going to be starting. And then we have phase. Which way is the graph being pulled by this x minus pi over 15? It's getting pulled to the right. So right pi over 15, or you could have just wrote down a positive pi over 15. Now we start. So the x's are the same thing as yesterday. We always start at the phase. So we're starting at a positive pi over 15. To find the ending value, you've got to add a period length on to where you're starting. So we'll do phase plus period down here. So the phase is 1/15. We're going to add 2/3. So in order to add fractions, remember you got to have a common denominator. So you got to multiply top and bottom here by 5. So that's going to give us a 15 and a 10. So it's going to finish at 11 over 15. And now you know what's average. Average to get the very middle. So 1/15 added to 11/15, and we'll divide by 2. So that's 12/15 timesing by a half. Canceling, I'm going to reduce the 2 and the 12. That's going to be 1. That's going to be a 6. 6 and 15 reduce each other by 3. So 3 goes into 6 twice, and into 15, 5. I end up with 2/5. Okay. And now we average. I'm going to go down here where I can do a little more room here. 1/15 added to 2/5. Divide by 2. But again, we've got to have a common denominator to add. So we'll multiply by 3. So I'll be back to my 6/15. So now when I add, I'm going to have 7/15 times by the half. I'm going to get 7/30. Nothing reduces here. So 7 pi over 30. And then one more time. 2/5 plus 11/15 divided by 2. Common denominator is coming next. Timesing by 3, that's going to give me 6/15. Adding 17/15. Dividing by 2 is timesing by a half. Nothing cancels. 17 pi over 30. Okay, now the y's. If you can see it in your head, otherwise you can wait for the graph. But sine is the snake. The snake starts on the axis. Where is my axis at? 2. So it's starting at 2. Now it's flipped over, so the snake is going to now go down. How far down from 2 am I going? So if I'm going down 4 and I'm standing on 2, where am I going down to? -2. Yes. Yep. Adding, I added 1/15 plus 2/5. And then I got a common denominator here on the 2/5 times by 2 by 3 and 5 by 3 and got 15. So then that's common denominator. Okay. All right, now back to my snake. Axis down to the min. Come back to the axis at 2. Now I got to go up 4. But I'm standing on 2, so what's that going to take me to? 6. And then back to 2. So see the snake? Starting on the vertical axis and then going up and down amplitude. All right, second table. So again, the second table is going to start where this one did, at the phase. And then to find the ending value, because we're going backwards on the number line, we're going to go phase minus period. So that's 1/15 subtract the period of 2/3. You have to have a common denominator, so we're going to multiply by 5 to get to the 15. So then 1 minus 10 is -9/15. But 3 goes into both of those, so we'll have -3/5. And now it's 3 more averages. So for the middle here, 1/15 plus a -3/5 divide by 2. Have to get a common denominator, so we'll multiply by 3. So that's going to give me -9/15. Let's see, 1 plus negative 9 is negative 8 fifteenths. Timesing by a half. I can reduce my 2 and my 8. So negative 4 pi over 15. Here, 1/15 plus negative 4/15 divide by 2. That will give me, let's see, 1 plus a negative 4 is negative 3/15 timesing by a half. I'm going to reduce my 3 and my 15 first, so that's going to be a negative 1/5, so negative pi over 10. Did I do that right? Oh yeah. And then over here, negative 4/15 plus negative 3/5. Ooh, I almost wrote 15 down there. Divide by 2. Common denominator. Again, if you're using a calculator, it's okay, but hopefully you've gotten a good command of these by now. So timesing by 3, negative 9/15. It's going to give us a negative 13/15. Timesing by a half. Nothing reduces. Negative 13 pi over 30. Those couldn't get any uglier. That's about as ugly as they're going to get. All the common denominators, and so if you can get through that, I cannot make it any harder than that. Okay, now it's the y's. So you know on sine and cosine, the axis values stay in the same position. So where we had the positive 2's, those are going to stay because that's our x-axis. It's like our old zeros. So the first, middle, and last are all 2's. And then you know with sine, the snake is does not have that folding line of symmetry, so these flip-flop. Okay. If I look through my x's, wherever x is a 0, that's where my y-axis is. There is not a critical point on the y-axis, so I've got to figure out where the y-axis is at. So the way I do this, let's see, and I got to go up to 6 and down to negative 2, so I'm going to squeeze this in. I'm going to start with my middle value, which is pi over 15. And I'm going to put the 4 tick marks out to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this last tick mark represents my 11 pi over 15. I'm not going to put the y-axis in yet. You're going to tell me where it is in a minute. Now the second table starts at the pi over 15, and I need 4 tick marks to the left to represent these 4 values. So this is negative 3 pi over 5. How do I know where the y-axis is going to fall? What happens with the x's when I pass over the y-axis? They switch from positive to negative. Where does that happen in my table? Right here. Here's a positive, here's a negative. The y-axis is somewhere between these 2 tick marks. So I've got to find them. Pi over 15. And then this one would be negative pi over 10. So the y-axis is somewhere in here. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's in between those. Just make sure you don't use the y-axis as a critical value. Okay, now I've got to go up to a positive 6. And I've got to go down to negative 2. And I know my new axis is at 2. Everybody's with me so far? And now we're ready to plot points. So I look back to my table. Pi over 15, which is this tick mark here. Pi over 15. I need my ordered pair at a y value of 2, so on the axis. Then it goes down to negative 2. Back to 2. up to 6, and then back to 2. Now be careful, don't put a dot on the y-axis. Here's my pi over 15. Then the next tick mark is negative pi over 10. I want that to be up at 6. Not on the y-axis, because I don't have an x value of 0 here. Then I come back, down, down, and then back here. You feel like one of those is enough? Yes, don't do another. Okay, I've got 2 of the given a graph come up with the equation. Can I get rid of this? Okay. All right, so not nearly as much work. Number 2. I don't even need all that. Again, the B is going to be the hard part here. Extra hard because we're not starting at 0. Are you ready? So first of all, get the function. What function do you see here? Sine. It's the snake. Okay, let's go for amplitude. How far is it from the axis to the max or the axis to the min? 2. Is it flipped over? Or is it normal? We want the positive. Okay. Do we have any vertical shift? Is there a new x-axis, or is everything centered on the x-axis? X-axis. So there's no vertical shift, so we don't even need a number there. It would be 0, but we don't have to write that down. Do we have any phase shift? Definitely phase shift. It got pulled off of the y-axis. It got pulled to the right, pi over 5. So do you want the plus or the minus? Minus. If it went to the right, it had a minus. If it goes to the left, it had a plus, just the opposite. The stinking B. Before, when it started at 0, we could just set up 2 pi over B equals the end number, because the end number was the period. This is not the period because it's not starting at 0. I've got to find this distance first. How do I find this distance? You got to subtract. So we're going to find the period by taking 8/5 and subtracting the beginning 1/5. So the period is 7 pi over 5. Now I set 2 pi over B equal to that to find the B. Before, all the other ones we started at 0, so the ending value was the period. Now it's not. So 7 pi B equals 10 pi. Divide by 7 pi. Yes. Yes, because it's a distance. Like a yes. So y equals 2 sine 10/7 x minus pi over 5. Okay, try one more, and then we'll let you do homework. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter where you start solving these at. Like on the test, obviously each thing is worth a point, except for the b. I've got a couple points in it because there's more work there. Everything else you can kind of see right from the graph, except for that b value. So these are worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 points right here on the test. So show me what you know. You know a lot of it, so don't panic when you don't know everything. Are we ready? Okay, what trig function do we have? Cosine. Everybody better get those right. Okay. To get the amplitude, we need to know where the middle of this thing is at. Where's the middle at? How do you figure out the middle? Because it's obviously shifted up. Where's my new axis at? I can kind of eyeball it. How do I figure out what that value is? You want to find the middle of 5 and 1. What are you going to do? Average them. So 5 plus 1 divided by 2. So the axis is at 3. So what's my amplitude now? 2. 2 to there, 2 to there. Do you want a plus 2 or a minus 2? Is that cosine or is that cosine flipped over? Minus 2. The leading number out here is our vertical shift. Do you know what the vertical shift is? That 3 you just figured out. We'll leave the b for last. That's the one that's a lot of work. How about phase shift? Which way did it get pulled? And how much? Went to the left, pi over 8. So do you want a plus pi over 8 or a minus pi over 8? Plus. Just the opposite of what's there. And now again, that stinking b, you've got to find this distance and set 2 pi over b equal to the distance. And you find distance by subtracting the values. So period is 3/4 minus this negative 1/8. Which means I need a common denominator. So I'll multiply by 2. So 7/8. So we set 2 pi over b equal to 7 pi over 8 and do cross products. Divide by 7 pi. 16/7. Okay.